Okay, yeah, I might get started. So welcome. We're going to have a chat today about making sense of JobKeeper. I'm going to run through a number of things. I have got some links that I can hand out afterwards and hopefully clarify whether on Monday you should be opting in with the ATO's form when it's out. As to, okay, I'm guessing, Yanni, you can hear me. The chat's down the bottom. Thanks for the message. So what I'm going to do is run through a number of things. These are around why do we have JobKeeper, who's eligible from an employment point of view, from an employee, and also eligible business participants. We're going to look at, in particular, ABN sole traders and if you've been operating as a contractor. And that was sort of something that I put into my Newtown Facebook community group. So really trying to help some people there because otherwise you're sort of falling through the cracks. Wanting to explain what the turnover test is. So a key part of the eligibility is a decline in turnover for small and medium-sized businesses. This is under 30%, so we're going to run through that. We're going to understand what the process is. We're going to have some examples and then a little bit of what's the difference between job seeker and JobKeeper, and then also some of the issues that we currently have. And I might jump out and get started. Firstly, an advice disclaimer. There's always the fine print. So any of this is not legal advice. It's not appropriate to your individual circumstances, and the information that's contained is not to be used for any other purposes than your own information, and really do recommend you seeking the advice of your tax agent or BAS agent. So why JobKeeper? So unfortunately, we all saw the lines in front of Centrelink when the enforced closures took place in March, and just the government systems really weren't unable to cope with the number of people that were starting to apply. So cynics like myself might say it's also to reduce unemployment numbers, and it really is a way, though, this is a short-term period. I'm not sure how long we'll be in lockdown, but it's a way of business owners looking after their employees, making sure that they are ready to start when the businesses are able to start commencing. Eligible employers. There's some real key dates that we need to understand. They apply to individuals, partnerships, trusts, and also companies who were carrying on a business as at 1 March 2020. You needed to have an Australian business number on or before the 12th of March 2020. You also need to meet the 30% decline in turnover test. You need to have either lodged your 2019 tax return showing that you had business income, or lodged an activity statement during the period up to 12th of March showing a business income. If you don't have either of those, then there'll need to be ATO discretion as to whether you're an eligible employer. Eligible employees. So first of all, your employer is eligible. And then they also need to make the decision to register. You could have been a full-time, part-time, or long-term casual, so 12 months or more, working on a regular and systematic basis. And that needed to be at 1st of March 2020. It wasn't applicable if you, say, had a contract at 1st of March but weren't meant to be starting work until 12th of March. You needed to actually be physically working on 1st of March 2020. You need to be at least 16 years of age. You need to be an Australian citizen, a New Zealand citizen, on a visa 444, or a permanent Australian resident for tax purposes. You also can only be in receipt of JobKeeper from one employer, so that is going to be part of the nomination form that you're requested to fill out. And an eligible employee is not an ABN contractor of a company. So say if you've got a larger company that you are contracting to, you supply them with an ABN invoice, they are not an eligible employee. It's different than rules around payroll tax and workers' compensation. This is for pay-as-you-go withholding. There's no partner income test, unlike job seeker. So what is an eligible business participant? So what's happened here is a lot of businesses, they don't pay themselves, the owners, a salary. So for an example, when you own a company, it makes profits, you can pay yourself a dividend. If you have a trust, you can have a trust distribution partnership, you get the partnership income, and a sole trader, well, that income just goes to you, the profit. So in these instances, what the ATO have allowed to happen is that one of those owners is able to receive an amount of money. So if it's a sole trader, that will directly go through to a sole trader. If it's a partner in a partnership, an adult beneficiary in a trust, or a shareholder director in a company, then what's happening currently is the understanding, and this is a bit of a confusing ongoing change, is that the entity will be able to receive the $1,500 per fortnight, where there are, again, that person is not an employee of any other entity, they can be a casual employee. The business had to have had an ABN on 12th of March. And again, there's those income requirements that a tax return had either been lodged, the 2019 return, or an activity statement during that period up to 12th of March 2020. So the turnover test, the 30% drop, this is really key, and this is what a lot of tax agents and BAS agents are having issues with, and we are expecting clarification from the ATO later this afternoon. What we've heard unofficially is that the government is really keen to get funds flowing, and so they are going to be looking at whether it is a like for like. So if you have been reporting to the ATO on a cash basis for a business activity statement, then what we're hearing is that you can show a decline in your revenue from, let's say, March 2020, from March 2019 of more than 30%, you'll be eligible. So GST turnover under the legislation is typically on an accruals basis. And so that's where some of the confusion has had. And so whilst we are seeing a lot of the government media saying there's a $1,500 payment, there are some issues around how that's calculated, and obviously this is the first test that needs to be met. And so we are waiting to have confirmation of the calculation. Having said that, if your income has purely ceased from a March period because of the forced lockdowns, this may be something that you can easily show, and then that's a way that you can obviously keep those records and make sure that you can register come Monday. For ABN sole traders and contractors, we are seeing a large number of questions, particularly around the entertainment industry and hospitality, because you're not generally long-term casual employees. And so what we're seeing is, can a sole trader with more than one business receive multiple JobKeeper payments? So the answer is no. So it's either JobKeeper and from one employer, or it's JobKeeper or JobSeeker. So you can't have multiple sources of the government assistance. Do you need to be registered for GST? So businesses that do have an Australian business number, that is a requirement, might not have to have registered for GST because they are under the income threshold of 75,000. If this is the case, then you haven't lodged a business activity statement. It may be harder to show the decline in turnover. And so at the moment, we're waiting to see whether the application comes out and shows this. Obviously, if you've got a business activity statement and it has been lodged, then you're meeting some of those tests. If you have lodged your 2019 individual tax return, though, this is something that might be able to help. If you've got a business schedule and income in there. What if you obtained an ABN after 13th of March? Unfortunately, you won't be eligible. And what if you can't calculate that your turnover has dropped by 30%? So we are seeing, I suppose, particularly with sole traders and people that are earning more spasmodic income, that this is something that might be trickier, because it still might be an instance where you put all your information together at the end of a financial year and hand it to a tax agent to do the tax return. You are unfortunately going to have to work out how you can compare your income for a March or April period. It's actually any testing period from 30th of March up to 20th of September is the eligible period, if you can show you've got a decline in the income or turnover. And so you will need to work that out. We are seeing that tax and BAS agents at the moment are under an enormous amount of stress in trying to work out the constantly changing legislation. So it is a case of trying to be as self-sufficient as possible if you currently don't have a tax agent or BAS agent, and then getting to a point where, you know, working out who is able to help. And I would suggest you make sure they are registered. I do think we're going to see a lot of scams, unfortunately, people that will take advantage of a situation like this. And so just really make sure that you look on the ATO's website. They've got a link to whether someone is registered. So it's really, really important that you have a level of recourse if someone's helping you and something goes wrong, that you've got some professional indemnity backing. So what is the process? So currently we know that you need to be an eligible business. So first off, you need to work out whether your financial information is all up to date. So bank reconciliations, everything's reconciled if you are using an online software program. Obviously, a company like Xero, they are making sure they're working, you know, around the clock with their dev teams to be able to get all the changes in, particularly with single touch payroll and how that's going to be reported. You need to review your estimated business income and confirm that it has dropped by more than 30% in the relevant testing period. Then on Monday, so at the moment there's an ATO update, which it's really just meant to be giving you information. I'm hearing that that's all a bit spasmodic as to whether anyone's getting updates, but so I would recommend going to the ATO website though and having a look at the information they have got. They are updating it probably on a routine basis, and I think over the next sort of month until the 1st, or probably till the 14th of May, there's going to be some changes that continue to happen as the policy is really being developed in a very short time frame, unlike anything I've ever seen in my professional career. Currently, you do need to advise your eligible employees. So if you're pretty certain that you are going to be eligible and you meet that 30% decline in turnover, then you need to be giving your employees a relevant form. I will show you what that looks like. So it's a form for your employees to fill out. There's a bit of uncertainty as to, okay, it's saying 30th of March here, 26th of March is what was on another form. And when it comes back, you don't actually have to lodge it with the ATO. You do actually have to ensure that it is on your system. So your employees can opt in or they can opt out if they're going to be obtaining the JobKeeper with another employee, or for whatever reason, they might not even just want it to be applicable. So that's what the current form is like. It is on the ATO website, and you should be giving that to your employees and notifying them that you are planning on helping with the obtaining the application process. You need to make sure that the salaries from the 30th of March are a minimum of $1,500 and are also paid for the duration of the period that you are receiving the JobKeeper payments. So it's a direct flow through to your employees. You're administering this on their behalf, and obviously it's designed to help businesses with keeping their employees and funding some of their wages. I have seen, unfortunately, in a number of groups where people are starting to say that their employer is going to keep some of their $1,500. If you see that, there's some links on the ATO site as to how to job in those employers. Obviously, it's a little bit difficult, but with the single touch payroll, once that starts, the ATO are going to be getting the information from employers and making sure that those $1,500 amounts are paid. And I'm imagining that the compliance on that's going to be pretty strict. So you will be receiving $1,500 per fortnight as a minimum as part of this process if your employer is registered for the JobKeeper payments. The single touch payroll reporting. So again, this is for people that are businesses and they have staff. It's a little bit different if you're a contractor. You won't need to be having payroll requirements through single touch payroll. If you have employees, that is going to be as per normal. Most clients are using software payroll for that. And you will have a new requirement though, that you will need to report your turnover for the month within 7 days. We're expecting this to be able to happen through the ATO business portals. So here I've collated some of the important dates for JobKeeper. So you can see the first one being 1st of March. So you needed to be an employee and you needed to be carrying on a business. You needed on the 12th of March an ABN. And then we can see that what I've got on the right hand side is the information that the ATO have sent to software developers. And so they are the fortnightly pay runs that are going to be receiving the $1,500. And that information there is more really around, one, the additional reporting requirements and the administration required. You can see down the side here, we've got the amounts that come through to the employees and when they'll be paid to the employer. So these are the $3,000 here has to have been paid as at the end of April. So this first 2 fortnights paid to eligible employees, there is a top up allowed. So that's the first month that it is going to be eligible for payment for those fortnights. And then these are the cash flow amounts as they come through. As an example, we have Ben. Ben is a sole trader, he's a musician. He is an Australian resident. He has an Australian business number and he's had that for 3 years. He has no employees. So he hasn't been able to work since the venue's closed mid-March. But however, he had a really good start to March. He had a festival up the coast and so his income was quite high. However, he's got nothing booked for April. He can project his April income and apply for JobKeeper from 20th of April if he is expecting that it's going to be a 30% decline from April 2019. So where there's no ambiguity around closures and shutdown, this is generally a simple process. Therefore, he is an eligible business participant and he qualifies for the JobKeeper scheme. So here we're saying he's an eligible business participant. So it's not as a relate of being an employee. As a sole trader with an ABN, he is able to claim $1,500 per fortnight through JobKeeper. I've also included down the bottom some other options that musicians and those in the entertainment and arts industry might want to consider. So there's some New South Wales government small business grants, and there's resilience funds set up by the Arts Council, online performances. I'm seeing a lot of people doing things through Patreon, PayPal links on their websites and social media. Facebook have got some small business grants that are going to be coming up. And then the City of Sydney have also released some. And I did actually notice that, I think even Inner West Council, so even just checking with local councils. So I think being on Google and having a bit of a look of around about grants is something that would be worthwhile for anyone in the arts industry, because unfortunately that casual employee, given the very nature of how things work in the entertainment industry, there's not many casual employees over 12 months. So that is something that unfortunately was left out of the JobKeeper payments. So we have Natalie. She is a sole trader as well. She's a Pilates instructor. She is an Australian citizen, also has an ABN, but she only started business 9 months ago. And so she doesn't have a history to be able to compare to. She has no employees and she hasn't been able to work also since March. She has no other employment income and she's currently being supported by her husband who earns $250,000. So as she can't compare that income, she's going to need to request the ATO's discretion to be eligible for the JobKeeper payments. So there'll need to be some sort of, again, level of financial information showing that she had been carrying on a business, she had been building that business up, and so again, we're not quite sure how that discretion is going to be processed. I'm imagining they're going to have quite a few to deal with, and given that, again, it's all happening within the next few weeks, I think that'll be something that just collate the information as soon as you can and be ready to fill those forms out and seek discretion when we know more about it. Again, for someone from the fitness industry, there's the New South Wales government grants and there's also some Facebook grants available. So what is the difference between JobKeeper and JobSeeker? So JobSeeker was Newstart under Centrelink, which has been changed to JobSeeker once the coronavirus lockdowns took place. We are seeing that once JobKeeper was announced, I do think there has been a fair bit of reduced panic across the community, knowing that there is other help that's going to be available. And we are seeing, though, that anyone that has applied for the Centrelink JobSeeker benefits, we have been advised that keep those applications in, and once we know more about JobKeeper, and then you can make that decision as to which one you'd take. There are individual facts. And so one of the companies that I have heard of, and I haven't used them myself, is called ClaimRight. And I will click on this one and just show people, because it's a financial planner that I've kind of come across, and he really does try and help people ensure they get the right entitlements. So I would recommend their services if kind of you're not sure what you're entitled to from a government funding point of view. So there are a number of issues that we're still seeing. So where you might be a cafe and you cannot operate, and you really are just going to be passing on the $1,500, there's that weighing up decision of the extra administration involved. People might have generally been on lower amounts, so sometimes people have the ethics of the staff might have been getting $300 a week and now they're getting $1,500 a fortnight, so some of that sort of extra top up. So there are some questions around, you need to make a choice as a business owner. Is it the right choice for your business? So employees are being pressured from employees. Obviously, the Australian government, again, the social media pages are promoting it like it's a very simple process to get the $1,500. As we've seen, there are some risks involved, particularly around the turnover. So if you don't meet that 30% turnover decline, then there is the risk that the employer will need to pay back that money. It doesn't go down to the employee, and there could potentially be general interest charges. So for small medium enterprises in financial distress, the JobKeeper isn't really a lifeline as such, where you may have had to, when you can't operate. It's different if you can still carry on a business and you've got staff working from home. So serious decisions need to be made before you hit the register button from Monday. There are also some implications around the Fair Work Act, that it really is, again, important to make sure the staff that you have under any applicable awards, that you're aware of any changes in their working conditions as a result of getting the JobKeeper and changing any of their activities. So there are some issues and things that we don't know. So again, around the turnover test, not sure yet the whole cash versus accruals. GST turnover under the GST Act is an accruals basis. Cash was introduced to have a simplified administration process for smaller businesses. And again, the month, or whether it's a business activity statement quarter, I have heard, again, not confirmed, that the government are wanting to have the cash flow moving. So as long as you've got a like-for-like basis and you've got reasonable proof and care in how you came up with those figures, that they are going to be fairly lenient. The payroll tax, so that is the JobKeeper payments are included in payroll tax unless exempt. So I think Adelaide's the one that's actually exempted at the moment. And again, just keep an eye out for how those changes occur. There will be on costs for a lot of people that currently aren't doing monthly reporting. So you are going to have monthly reports prepared. We do recommend, obviously, using a program like Xero. And then again, just the level of complexity for staff, for different types of employees, casuals, part-timers and full-time, how many pay runs you might have. So there's some complexity probably in the startup, and then once it gets going, I think things will settle down. We heard last night that the Prime Minister is starting to talk about easing of restrictions coming in May. I think if we all sign up to an app and can be tracked, there might be some level of movement freeing back up. So at the moment, we don't know when that will happen, but the legislation for JobKeeper does have a sort of a get out clause in there that should things change, they can end it sooner than the 27th of September. However, the payments are meant to have all finished by the 30th of September. In regards to superannuation, so if you're getting $1,500 a fortnight for an employee and they were previously only earning $900, that top-up amount of $600 doesn't need to include superannuation. Anything that is your ordinary salary, superannuation is included on. So if someone is earning $2,000 a fortnight, superannuation is payable on that whole amount as per normal. In terms of integrity measures, we are seeing a lot of to talk about one employer's not forwarding through the whole $1,500, people trying to change invoicing. There's a lot of pressure from, unfortunately, it seems to be tradies that asking, well, can I not invoice, and changing things. So again, the government's going to be having monthly reporting going forward, and I think the policy is what the policy is currently legislated. There are some things in there, I think, that if you had more time, they might have been done differently, i.e., there are quite wealthy business owners that probably didn't need the stimulus measures that are getting them. But it is what it is, and the ATO are administering it on that process. However, they will be ensuring that there's no schemes, no one deliberately trying to change things to get into any of these benefits. That also includes the cash flow boost, which we sort of discussed previously. So this is just an example of what a sort of a workflow looks like, to give you an idea of some of the extra steps that we all now need to be doing in order to be able to register. So given the time period, what I'm going to show you is just what Xero has been doing and currently what's happening in their files. I've just got a demo file, called it Rona Pty Limited. So the 30% test is really looking at, again, a like period to a like period. So it's from the 30th of March and a month ending. So you can use the month of 31st of March, or you can project April. So this is a report that I've calculated in Xero. You can just look at your P&L and compare month to month. But this report will just show, so in March 2019, this company had $35,000 in sales. In March 2020, it's only had $13,000, and we've got a reduction of 60%. So this report can be published and just kept on file for when you're putting in your application for showing the decline in turnover test. In terms of setting in a Xero, you've got an option here between the cash and accruals basis. So it's actually good to run this report in both of those. And if it's under 30% in both, you don't need to worry about any kind of issues in regards to the definition of GST turnover. We've also got, we had an update from Xero just before this webinar actually, and so in the single touch payroll area of your Xero file, so if you have a Xero file and bookkeepers and accountants are using it, it's actually really good to make sure you get user access and have a look at some of this information. So in the single touch payroll, Xero are currently putting information in relation to COVID-19 and what they're doing. And so we've got some government support, some links, and it's going to be setting up. So register your interest with the ATO. That's currently what, is just for updates. It's not the actual application process. I imagine that'll change when the application comes through. Setting up for single touch payroll. That is going to be a requirement for reporting. So if you haven't done that, you will need to get that set up. Again, not if you are a sole trader ABN contractor. Enrolling employees for JobKeeper payments. So that's that form that we've already kind of had a look at, that the staff have filled that out. And then our understanding is STP will be a checkbox. So these will be the staff that are eligible and then are in the system. And so you can see here that Xero are going to be on top of that. So, I mean, most people, if you're using an STP provider, which you'll need to do, there'll be some level of information that that company is providing to be able to help complete this information on your own. And what else? On our website, we've also got some additional information around the government grants, who obviously the original legislation, and the Arts Council that looks at those resilience fund, and again that commercial rent code. So there's a few different things that are coming out to help businesses. It's just knowing where to find that. And I think you'll find a lot of accountants and in particular actually bigger companies are sharing information amongst ourselves. There's just so much to learn that it's very hard for sole practitioners to be doing their existing work and then all the marketing and learning that is going on. I think that was sort of largely what I wanted to cover. There was one point around once you are eligible, and if you have a month where your income goes up, it doesn't matter. Once you're eligible, you stay in. Having said that, if you if you have 1 month and it's April that is down, ridiculously low, and then the rest of it is high, the other 5 months, I would be expecting a knock on the door, and so you might need to show, what happened. So I wouldn't do too clever on the changing of the April numbers. And I do think any kind of taxation or taxation, where most of us aren't prepared to risk our businesses, so there will be a level of disclaimer on some of that information in terms of that decline if it's looking unsure. So here again are those sort of important dates as to the things that need to be done and when they need to be occurring. So right. So I'm not sure if the chat function is working. So Yana, you said it didn't work. Oops. It's all right. Nope, it's not working. Thanks. Well, if you've got any questions, feel free to send me an email, and we'll know more next week when some of the changes are all coming through. But I am hoping that helps explain what JobKeeper is if you're eligible. I think the main things that we're really, as accountants and bookkeepers, are concerned about is the decline in turnover test, that 30%. So really start making sure that your information is up to date and you can show that drop. Again, really work out if you are getting this for your employees, making sure that you're making the right decisions. If you need to look at whether you do decide to keep people on or not, that is something that I recommend seeing a HR employment lawyer, just to make sure that there's nothing there that can lead to potential liabilities for your business. And if you are in the entertainment and arts industry, I am hoping that there is some talk around Screen Producers Association trying to get assistance, and so I hope some of those sort of changes also come through. And I do recommend probably lobbying your local MPs for that. So enjoy the rest of your Friday. Thank you for listening in, and I am finished. Thanks.